Good morning, everybody. It is 8:15. I want to welcome everybody to our Focus on Friday. We are broadcasting live from the Center for Creativity here at the Metro campus. So we have people that are joining us on the West campus, folks that are joining us on the Northeast campus, and folks that are joining us on the Southeast campus. And of course, everybody live right here in front of us. Thank you for joining us as we talk about consistent information for this Focus on Friday. So we're talking about this because this is so important as we are the largest community college in the state. We are the third largest institution. We are a commuter urban college, which means that consistency in information is extremely important. The more consistent the information is, the better the communication is. So we're going to be talking to many different departments today and finding out what is their secret. How do they communicate to each other? And then how do they make sure that their information is communicated and consistent to other campuses? We do a lot of that in enrollment services as we're starting to roll out the answer centers. One of our goals and things that we talk about is how do we perfect one model? How do we make sure that we're communicating and streamline all those processes? And once we get that right, then how do we duplicate that into our other campuses to make sure if someone goes to Owasso and then goes to the West campus and then goes to Northeast campus, that they can get the same information and the procedures are the same as well. You hear a lot about our software and technology that's coming on board that will help us do just that. We'll also hear from representatives such as advising. We'll hear from folks from the bursar office and from financial aid and from wellness services as well. But that's not the most important part because we have a really good treat for you. Later on in this presentation, you're going to hear from Mr. John Nelson. He is a U.S. Navy veteran. Some of you may know that on Monday, the Veterans Day Parade was canceled for the first time in Tulsa's history. We have one of the largest Veterans Day parades, but we decided here at TCC that we're going to extend that and we're going to celebrate our veterans today. So we have a very good presentation coming up from John later on that you'll be happy to hear about. So I want to talk to us about some house rules as well. There are people on your campuses and right here at the Metro campus that are part of our Focus on Friday campus planning team, and they are here to support you by helping you to fill out information. So this is how it works. When some of the speakers come up, they'll go through a presentation, they'll have a chance to talk, and if you have questions that you want to ask the speaker, then you will fill out this form. They're going to ask you, what is your question? They want your name, they want your department, they want your email, because they're going to track you down. But in reality, what they will do is they will compile this information, put it into one email, and then they're going to send this back out in one email on November the 26th. So very important. So if you see your campus support folks there on your campus, by the way, here at Metro, if your campus support part of the FOF planning team, raise your hand so we know where our people are. Yeah, so the folks that have their hands raised, I'm sure they're raising them on your campuses as well. They will make sure that, I hope they are, they'll make sure that you get the form filled out so we can turn it into the right spot. So let's go ahead and have a chance to get directly to our speakers first. We will hear from representatives from the bursar office. I want everybody to know that our next speaker will rush right out of here because she has to get home so she can clean her house because she's expecting about 20 people next week for Thanksgiving. Everybody put your hands together for Mandy Southard from the bursar office.
Thank you, Kedron. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for shouting out to Southeast, Northeast, and West Campus. What I'm going to do is figure out what I need to do to change the slide, first of all. Oh, thank you. Oh, okay, we're going to skip some of this, guys. Okay, so here we go. My name is Mandy Southard, and I'm going to talk to you about payment plans and refunds. So a couple things that could be very confusing for a lot of people who don't work in our office, of course, is payment plans. A student, if they do not have a FAFSA on file, or they either have to pay in full or set up a payment plan. If a student just goes online and makes a payment towards their account, it is not going to hold them in classes. So if you're under the impression that they just need to make a $35 payment and they'll be holding their class, that is not the case. They do have to go in and actually set up an installment plan. That installment plan does require a $35 setup fee. That fee is non-refundable, and there are whenever priority enrollment opens, every single payment plan option is available for that semester that they're going to be enrolling in. Now, each month, though, the closer that we get to classes starting, each month there will be a payment plan that will drop off of that availability, because we want those classes to be paid in full before the term opens for that following semester. And there could be a down payment as well, depending on the plan that they choose. It would either be a 25% down payment or a 50% down payment. So the sooner that a student enrolls and has to set up a payment plan, probably the easier for them. They don't have to worry about a down payment. But if they wait till later in the semester and then they're trying to enroll, they might only have a couple options that require a down payment, as well as that $35 setup fee. Refunds. So the refund process, I do have little notes here because I don't want to get it wrong. Because yes, I do know about refunds. However, the process, I want to make sure that I'm delivering it correctly to you for behind the scenes type stuff. So our fall and spring refunds, though, they are done usually on Fridays. There are a few times, in those 2 semesters at the beginning of the term where we do add a second refund date into 1 week. And that's typically whenever financial aid ends up dispersing onto student accounts. We'll add an extra one in there so that way students can get their refunds quicker. And for summer, we usually do refunds on Thursdays. So, and that's only in June and July during that summer term. It's not going to be in May, and it's not going to be in August during interim or anything like that. So, excuse me. So, after refunds are done, there is a file that's sent to Bank Mobile, and Bank Mobile, this is where I'm going to use my notes, guys, usually gets that file on the following Monday or Tuesday after refunds are done. Those funds are then available to the student based on their refund preference. I'm going to get into refund preferences here in just a moment. The only time that process will change will be if a student owes a past balance. At that point, the process does completely change because that past balance does need to get resolved. Okay, so then they might have something that they have to pick up and sign over to us. So, Bank Mobile refund preferences. So refund preferences, the student does need to set up online at My TCC. They can log in through My TCC. They go into their My Account tab. They click on Bank Mobile refund preferences. And from there, they are setting up their account with Bank Mobile. And at that point, while they are in there is when they want to set up their refund preference. If they go in there and they set up an account, but they don't set up their refund preference, there's a totally different process that takes, and then they're going to need to come by our office so that we can give them Bank Mobile's information to finish setting up that preference. So it's always easier whenever a student, when they log in to Bank Mobile refund preferences through the My TCC portal, that they actually finish and completely in full set up that refund preference. There are 3 different refund preferences. They can choose to have their refund delivered to their checking account or savings account, direct deposited. There's electronic deposit into a Bank Mobile Vibe account, which essentially they get a card. I'm sure some of you might be used to Hire One, but now it's Bank Mobile. They'll get that card. That essentially is a debit card. It is just like a student checking account. They deal with Bank Mobile. They are a bank. So they essentially get that Vibe card. And yes, that is the quickest way for them to get their funds if they choose that one. And then the third option is to have a paper check delivered by U.S. mail. So that one can probably be a little bit slower depending on, where they live. If their post office is delivering quickly. Other than that, I hope that I've been able to answer some consistent information to everybody. And again, payment plans are available, all of them at the time of priority enrollment. Refunds are processed, usually on Fridays during the fall and spring term, Thursdays in the summer term. And don't forget, they do have to pay for that $35 setup fee, and that fee is included in the installment plan that they choose and set up. And I am going to go ahead and hand the mic back over to Kedron So our lovely MC here, who has done an amazing job. Thank you.
Good job, Mandy. Thank you. So one of the highlights that Mandy discussed that I mentioned earlier was really using software, using technology. One of the great things about the revamping of my TCC is that a lot of students can go to one area and get that information about the refunds and the payment plan. So thank you very much, Mandy, representing from the Bursar office. So we're going to keep the show moving and now hear how folks from the academic advising area are also working, to keep their information consistent. Everybody, a warm round of applause for Cami Contreras, and Stephen English. Come on up, guys. You talking, Cam C? All right.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cami Contreras, and I am a senior academic advisor at the Southeast Campus. I'm also a liaison for the Science and Math Department.
And good morning, TCC. My name is Stephen Tyler English, and I am an academic advisor over at the West Campus, and I am a liaison for the College of Business and Technology. So to go ahead and get started, we're going to go over what exactly we do in advising, because there's been a lot of changes, and it's a lot of fun and good stuff. So I'm going to let Cami go ahead and start.
Awesome. Okay, so in academic advising, what do we actually do? We do have academic advising checklists that we're going to go over today. As both advisors, me and Stephen, play a very critical role in student success. So that's our goal. First, we're going to be starting where they are, starting their path with going over, visiting in their office. This is the first time, incoming freshmen coming in. We're going to tell them TCC goals, okay? Also, we're going to go over the application process, doing test scores, submitting any high school or previous college transcripts. We're also going to go over the placement test process, which places them into specific courses. And then we also go over new student orientation. We help them register for this requirement. New student orientation is required for every incoming student, new college student, should I say. And we help them with first year experience seminar, enrollment lab. Us as advisors actually attend these new student orientations and help them get enrolled in their first semester. And then we also go over during this visit what we offer as TCC. So since we are a community college, we go over, associate transfer degrees or associate of applied science programs, certificates. So we want to know what the student's career goal is. Okay.
All right, so the next part of our advising checklist is going to be the planning your path part of our advising model, and that is the second semester visit that students have. And Cami and I are going to kind of split this, but I'm going to go ahead and start. So the first part about this visit is that every semester, all students will receive a mandatory academic advising hold. And the main purpose for this is for students to check in with their advisors to make sure they're on the right path for their degree audit, for whichever programs are going towards, and just to kind of make sure that they're taking classes that they need and will go, of course, towards their academic and career goals. And if a student is on our awesome Tulsa Achieves program, we go through the progress for there as well, like seeing maintaining their eligibility, checking in with their volunteer match through their community service, things like that, going over their overall semester progress, seeing if there's any issues that they might have that we can help them resolve. And then we also, the big part is that we create a degree plan and we run a degree audit with DegreeWorks. That way students can have kind of a more concise goal of which classes they're going to be enrolling in coming semesters.
So throughout the planning process for students, we also definitely, again, want to meet where the student is. So not every student at TCC tests into college level courses. So this is based off a placement test. We go over if any one of our students test into foundation courses, we advise them appropriately on where they start with English, reading, and math. The majority of our students do test into these foundation courses. I always, make sure to notify the student that this does not measure success at all. And to start with the foundation courses, then we move our way up. So this is really to help the student become more prepared for that college level courses. This is also, we begin committing students to coursework for each semester. And then we make appropriate referrals, say to career services, TRIO programs, financial aid, bursar, wellness services, all that fun stuff. And I'm still going. Okay, so again, for the next semesters throughout the students' continuing path, we also start that conversation with transfer information. So that is our goal as academic advisors. We definitely want what's best for the student, whether it is transferring into an Associate of Applied Science program here or transferring to another university. Our job as academic advisors for that consistent information. We do meet with our partner institutions, OU, OSU, Langston, NSU, TU. So we get that, that accurate information from our university partners in order to properly advise our students on the transfer information. So we meet with, again, those transfer institutions, and then we relay that information back to the student.
All right, and then for the final portion of our advising checklist is going to be the preparing to finish section. And this will most often occur in like the 4th or 5th semester whenever a student is about ready to graduate. And this is probably one of my favorite parts about our advising checklist is that we get to guide the student along with the graduation application, and then it's just cool, seeing the look on their face when they're like, they finally accomplished what they are wanting to accomplish, whether that is stopping at an associate's degree or they're planning to transfer to one of our partner institutions or maybe somewhere out of state. And then we also work with the Completion Center to complete those graduation applications. So we really do appreciate the cohesiveness we have in between all of our interdepartment partners to where we're able to meet the students' needs and give them as clear and a concise plan as we possibly can. And Cami earlier mentioned that we are liaisons for Cami, it's the School of Science and Math. For me, it's the College of Business and IT. So Cami's going to kind of explain more about what exactly that means and other exciting changes that have happened with advising.
Awesome. Okay, so as academic advisors, you guys know that we could do it all, so we have moved towards liaisons for a specific school within TCC. So every advisor that TCC has is committed to a specific school. Mine is science and mathematics. So what does this mean? We build relationships within the departments, and we are able to create positive relationships between faculty and staff. What this provides is more consistency of information for our students. So if any student has questions regarding specifically science and math majors, they can come to me or the other liaisons within that School of Science and Math, and we know more knowledge about that specific major. So this allows students to gain more knowledge on that major. We do, as academic advisors, we attend departmental meetings for science and math. I know we do have monthly meetings that we attend. We work with individual programs, colleges, partner institutions, and by doing this, individual advisors are more knowledgeable with individual programs. So if, again, we're also talking to those universities that are specifically within the School of Science and Math, so we are able to provide that information for students who are transferring. And so this also helps retention. If we can get students to meet with a specific advisor that is more knowledgeable about their specific major, this helps them, hopefully definitely graduate and then continue their education. We do have specific caseloads that each one of us are responsible for, and so a student, can come and request to see an advisor, which we'll get into here in a little bit.
Yes, and as Cami mentioned, all advisors now, not just senior academic advisors, but every advisor on campus, we have our own individual caseloads for our students, which makes it really nice kind of keeping up with the November theme of consistent information, because students are now, they're no longer receiving multiple messages from multiple people. So they're not being bombarded with emails and phone calls with 5 people saying the same one thing. So that's really nice, because with our retention efforts, we're actually doing retention campaigns such as call campaigns where we're calling the student, a few times a semester, checking in, seeing how things are going. And then also we're doing other outreach campaigns such as email, just kind of checking in, saying, hey, priority enrollment starts now. We noticed that you haven't enrolled yet, so if you want to set up an appointment, we're more than happy to make that happen for you, which really helps out with the student because they know that with their own individual caseload, for example, like if I have a student, they will report to me and I will be the one giving them information instead of coming from all these different advisors, and just making sure that our information is clear and concise, and as well as being relevant towards their own personal goals.
Another thing that we do as academic advisors is we now have a Starfish early alert system that allows, this helps bridge the communication between faculty and academic advising. So we are responsible as senior academic advisors and academic advisors that within our caseload of students, we could reach out to the student if they are at risk of failing or if they are missing assignments, because our overall goal here is to see our students be successful. So while we still, we build more of that personal relationship with students, as academic advisors, this is awesome because previously we only saw walk-ins and we could see a new student, every single day, all throughout the day. Now going to caseloads, this kind of builds a more personal relationship that hopefully will build, great retention for students for each semester. Okay, and then Stephen's going to go more into depth about appointments and walk-ins.
All right, and this is the first semester that we have been utilizing the Starfish program, and as of right now, only advisors are making appointments with their students, as in we're doing it on their behalf. However, starting in January, I believe, we're going to roll Starfish out to the students to where they can see our availability for up to 3 weeks, and then they will be able to actually make an appointment with us on their own. And this is the first time that we've had this access at TCC. So with this in mind, advisors, we now kind of shifted our schedule a little bit to where we all have dedicated appointment days, which at West Campus is typically 3 of our 5 days at work. We have appointment based, and then the other 2 days are our walk-in service, which I will have Cami go more into. But this makes it a lot easier for students to kind of, like what she mentioned, put a name to a face, like actually being able to meet with your assigned academic advisor, and that way just making sure that information is clear and concise.
And even though we do now offer appointments, we do continue to use our walk-in services. So this is great for students who work throughout the day that maybe can't make an appointment or just is on campus and needs to see an academic advisor immediately. They are able to walk in. They could either set up an appointment with their specific advisor within the school that they are, or they could request an academic advisor. So if they wanted to see a specific advisor that they like, or if they don't know which advisor is within their school, they can get that information and meet with them directly. Now, again, any student can see any academic advisor, but this also, we are still, no matter if a student sees a separate advisor that's not within their school, the academic advisor within the school is still making those outreach efforts. So they will still get that consistent information, whether phone, email, any of our outreach efforts that we do, they are still able to get that information within their school.
All right, well, thank you all for letting us talk with you all today. Happy holidays. We're going to hand it back to the man of the hour, Mr. Keedron.
Thank you, sir. And if I have Karen come up. So we've all heard those rumors, things. Somebody in this department told me this. The guy with the red shirt told me this. The lady with the long hair told me this. All sorts of misconceptions. Karen Jeffers, our Director of Financial Aid, will talk to us a little bit about those misconceptions and how important it is to turn those misconceptions around for consistency information. Karen Jeffers.
Thank you, Keedron. Good morning, everybody. I know financial aid is an incredibly exhilarating topic to discuss and present on, but for some of us, we do actually enjoy it. So just to kind of start off, when you think about financial aid or students who are looking for options to pay for the cost of their education, probably their biggest ticket item would be to complete the FAFSA.
everyone should complete the FAFSA. It is free, it doesn't cost anything. So if somebody is telling you that a website asked for money when they went to apply, they are on the wrong website. So everyone needs to complete the FAFSA. This is their ticket to all financial aid programs, not just our federal Pell Grant or direct loans. It's also the ticket to a lot of state and institutional aid, such as Oklahoma's Promise as state aid. The biggest one at TCC is not only our tuition waivers, but also Tulsa Achieves. All Tulsa Achieve students are required to complete the FAFSA and the entire process for applying for financial aid. So yes, that means if we've asked for some crazy document, like their tax transcript, we do need to collect that before we can actually disperse aid, including Tulsa Achieves. Another misconception that we hear a lot is that my parents make too much money, so there's really not a need for me to complete the FAFSA. And so there really isn't an income limit per se when you apply for financial aid, but income is definitely taken into consideration in the needs analysis calculation to determine if a student is eligible for what we call need-based aid, things like Pell Grant and subsidized direct loans and work study. But in general, if you're eligible for aid, everybody's going to get something. It may not be the type of aid you want, but again, there's not an income limit, so worst case scenario, students would be eligible for student loans. And then kind of the final thing that I have to leave you with, because we do hear this a lot from other departments, is students and other staff always think you have to be enrolled full-time to get financial aid. That simply isn't the truth. Often each fund has various requirements. For instance, direct loans, you do have to be enrolled in as many as 6 credit hours or few. As long as you're enrolled in 6 credit hours, you are eligible for a direct loan. Pell Grant is an interesting fund because depending on your eligibility, you could actually take 1 credit hour and still receive Pell Grant. So that is definitely a myth that you have to be enrolled full-time in order to get financial aid. And remember, when we think about financial aid, we're not thinking anything specific. Financial aid is a broad term that we use to describe any type of financial assistance that a student could receive. So not just Pell Grant or loans or a Tulsa Achieves. It could be things that are actually processed in our bursar's office, like National Guard waivers or outside scholarships or tribal scholarships. Anything to help a student meet their educational costs, we consider financial aid. All right. So if you have any questions for us, make sure you fill out those cards and we will get our response back to you. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, and we'll do that by November 26th. So just a reminder, we have people from the FOF planning team, the campus support folks that are on each campus. So right about now, they should be raising their hands. I can see you out at West and Southeast. I can see if you're not raising your hands. Make sure that you are able to get one of the comment cards, especially if you have questions about financial aid and the bursar office and things that you're hearing the academic advising as well. Okay, so I really want to give credit to our next person who's going to come and present very quickly before we move to our guest speaker, because Jessica has done so much work to turn around our understanding of mental wellness, wellness in general, wellness services, how students access that. So Jessica Haven, come on up and talk to us about what you're doing to keep our information consistent. Jessica Haven, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Kedron. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So again, my name is Jessica Haven. I'm the Director of Wellness Services, and the FOF team reached out to some of us to give you all some information. So I just picked a few points about our services, and I hope that if you have any questions after today, that you will feel comfortable to reach out. All of you, as with any of our service areas, are the eyes and ears. You're the people talking to students and making referrals. So if you have questions about what we do, please feel free to reach out. The first one I wanted to mention is that our services, particularly our counseling services, are voluntary for students. And so it is just like any other campus service that we give the student the information and we allow them to make a decision on whether or not they want to engage in that particular service. And I say that it's few and far between, but we have had a couple of situations where an instructor tells a student to make an appointment, and then they show up and we say, actually, you don't have to be here unless you want to be here. Just things like that. We want to make sure that our services are seen as a choice. Unless there's some sort of crisis situation, at which point we need to be looping in supervisors and deans and campus police. Because we as counselors, we have to make sure that our services are voluntary, unless it's an absolute crisis. The second thing I wanted to mention is that students, we do have a session limit, and our session limit at this point is 5 sessions per academic year. And we define academic year as August 1 to July 31st. So it does cover the summer semester as well. So I checked into this a little bit as we began to offer our services. And basically, we need to make sure the student is currently enrolled for liability reasons. And so we define that as we will see students all the way up until the last day of the semester. So all the way up through finals, they're considered currently enrolled for that semester. Now, we also, within our policy, we have something that says if there's an extenuating circumstance, maybe the student has already had their 5 sessions, but they still don't feel like they have a good direction on community resources, we will do that. We will make those exceptions as we need to, but we try pretty hard to stay within currently enrolled, means all the way up to the day of the finals for that semester. So one example is, okay, so a student is enrolled in the fall. Can you see them over the summer? And unfortunately, we don't do that because maybe that student doesn't start in the fall. And then we've seen somebody who wasn't a student at TCC. And so if you guys have any questions about that, again, feel free to reach out. Another question we've gotten recently is concurrent students. And so myself and Dr. Dudley did a little bit of research. We can see concurrent students with parental permission. If they are under the age of 18, we do have to have parental permission. So we have a form that the parent can fill out. And I've also added to that we will make a phone call to the parent to make sure that ethically speaking, they're aware of what we do, what our credentials are, and the services that we offer. I would never want a parent to think that their student was going to get unlimited counseling through our offices, because we're not able to offer that, and I would just want to make sure that they're aware of other resources that they might need. The third one on here is just an update on a grant that we received this fall. So we have a 3-year, $375,000 SAMHSA grant. So this is federal money that is coming to TCC to do a couple of things. We're going to do some mental health awareness campaigns that Randy Harold, our health promotion coordinator, is going to be overseeing. So you will see more about that in the coming months. But we have dedicated funding now to get that out and make that extremely visible. We are going to be hiring a case manager to oversee additional mental health first aid training for faculty, staff, and students. So that's pretty exciting. I'm looking at our student life people over here. So we're going to look to our student leaders to get them trained in how to help other students. And the last thing that money is going to be able to provide us is basically a person who can be dedicated to overseeing those referrals that we make out into the community. So again, that's what our case manager is going to do, is for a student maybe who has a significant mental illness and needs medication management and those types of things, they're going to build bridges so that we're not just giving phone numbers, we're actually able to follow up. So the academic advisors were kind of talking about that personalized touch, somebody checking in with that student to make sure that they have what they need. And so we're pretty excited about that grant. I think it's going to add a lot of quality to what we are already doing for students and allow us to do some things that we normally wouldn't be able to do. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I wanted to mention, as far as our services, if you're making a referral, all of our information, including contact information, student assistance program information, even some links to some outside resources are all available on the website. If you search for wellness services, they are on the portal under safety and wellness, and they are on Blackboard on the main page. And so all of that is out there. If you're making a referral, you can give that information to the student in order for them to be able to find what they need. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. As you know, this past Sunday, we observed Veterans Day. We did not have the parade. That's okay. I think we're working to reschedule that. But we talked about that we would take the initiative to honor our veterans for their sacrifice and for their service. So if you will, on each campus, from West Campus to Metro Campus to Southeast to Northeast, Owasso, anybody that can hear my voice, if you are a veteran of the armed services, would you please stand at this very moment, and could everybody on every campus give these men and women a round of applause? Thank you for your service, and thank you for what you do for students here at Tulsa Community College. I am so proud and I am so honored to introduce our next guest speaker. For 20 years and exactly 4 days, this man has sailed the seas everywhere from Russia, Australia, Iceland, and we are so fortunate to have him here at Tulsa Community College as a career development specialist, actually, literally, folks, helping veterans connect to the people in the areas of different careers, helping employers understand the jargon, the language of veterans. What have they been through? What are they experiencing? And how can TCC connect them better to the outside world where they have the same advantage of earning the same types of income and having the same opportunities as we do because of their service? He's doing a great job in career services as a career development specialist, and we're gonna have a chance to hear from the man himself. So would everybody please stand for me and recognize our Chief Petty Officer, guest speaker, Mr. John Nelson. Come on up here, John.
Well, good morning, and thank you all very, very much. It's an honor to be here. Kedron, thank you for recognizing the veterans and for that great introduction. It's almost embarrassing and humbling, kind of scary all at the same time. But what we want to do today is talk about our student veterans. There might be a little bit of fear, a little bit of unsurety when it comes to how do I talk to a student veteran? Well, it's really nothing to be scared of. You know, there's some myths out there. I also want to share some facts. So I'm looking forward to having some fun talking about something that I'm super, super passionate about, and that's taking care of our student veterans. So first and foremost, what defines a veteran? By and large, a veteran means somebody who has served one day in any of our active services, be that the Sea Service, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, the Army, or the Air Force. Now, there are some programs where you're going to have more days for more eligibility. Like, for example, if you were to go to Oklahoma Employment Security Commission and see one of their veterans representatives, you need to have been active duty for 180 days. You know, some of the financial things that the veterans have, usually 3 years, that type of thing. But by and large, the legal definition, you can find it in U.S. Code Title 38, a veteran is anybody that has served for one day. What it doesn't apply to is anybody that's had a dishonorable discharge, or in the case of a commissioned officer, a dismissal. That pretty much gets rid of any hope of having benefits or services and that type of thing. Those are rare. The dishonorable discharges are rare, but any other discharge, be it honorable, general, medical, those types of things, they're still going to be eligible for many, 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 many services. Now, categories of military service, just a real quick synopsis. Active duty, enough said. These are the people, that's their full-time job. They're serving in any one of the services anywhere around the world and soon to be in space. But with that being said, active duty, that's everybody that serves full-time. Reserves. Reserves are actually components of the Department of Defense, not to be confused with the National Guard. The National Guard can trace its history all the way back to the militias that we read about in American history and that we read about in the Second Amendment. The National Guard really belongs to the state. The governor of the individual state or territory is the one who's the commander-in-chief for that National Guard. The reserves are just that. They're reserve components of the full-time Department of Defense active duty services. The National Guard can be activated by the president to become augmented with any of our full-time active duty or reserves when they're activated. Active Guard and Reserve, these are people that serve full-time active duty to support our folks in the Guard and the Reserves for whatever administrative duties or whatever else needs to be done, logistically speaking. And then, of course, Individual Ready Reserve. A lot of people fall into that. The folks that do 4 years, they're actually in the IRR, as they call it, for 4 years after that. They could be recalled to duty if they're needed because those skills and abilities are still fresh in their minds. They could bring them back without a whole lot of learning curve. People that sign up for the delayed entry program are actually part of the Individual Ready Reserve. So there's no pay, there's no real uniform component to that, but you're basically on the books and be called out at the leisure of the President or the Secretary of the individual service. Now, I want to make one thing perfectly clear about veteran education benefits. Here's a whole bunch right here. The Montgomery GI Bill, the VOC Rehab, the post 9/11 bill, survivors and dependents. Any and all questions about that need to be referred to our subject matter experts, Matt Hopkins and James Dotson, just right across the street over here, phone number 7279. But anything having to do with that, like Laura said, this has really looked more like financial aid. And our subject matter experts can answer anything and everything, sideways, backwards, Monday through Friday, everything. So please, 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 any questions that you might come across, make sure those student veterans get in touch with Matt and or James. Now here we go, some myths about veterans. Myth number one, military skills don't transfer or translate into the civilian workforce or into the classroom. They do. Veterans bring extensive leadership, teamwork, initiative to the civilian workforce. If you compare them with your normal traditional student, you know, think about what these 18, 19, 20-year-olds are doing. They're shooting $40 million aircraft off the deck of an aircraft carrier. They're driving $100 million pieces of equipment called HEMTs, the big missile carriers in the Army. They're fueling planes 5 miles up in the sky. They're doing drug interdictions with the Coast Guard. They're guarding embassies in the Marine Corps, for example. These are incredible gifts and talents that these young Americans bring to the classroom and eventually to the workplace. They're also well-versed in technology and strongly encouraged to take classes while they're on active duty. Everything in the military is computerized. Everything's on some sort of program. You know, some of the things that they do are literally like video games. You probably heard in the last week or so, the Army was hosting some sort of video game, I don't want to say tournament, but just a thing where they could come in and, you know, kind of show their skills because that's what they're looking for. These drones and these other unmanned vehicles, it's just like doing a video game. So that's why it's very, very important that they're well-versed in technology. They're also encouraged to take classes. That's how I got my degree. When I went into the service back in 1989, I had 150 hours but no degree. When I got to my final duty station, my young sailors were saying, Chief, get your degree before you retire. And I did because the military pays 100% tuition assistance. So they're coming in with a lot of experience, and they bring in what's called the JST, the Joint Services Transcript. And that way the folks in enrollment can look and see if there are any classes that potentially could transfer. But they're coming in, you know, smart as whips because they've got technology and they also have schooling, not only in the field that they serve in, their vocational field, but also in the classroom as well. Here's myth number two. All veterans served in combat. There have been a bunch of deployments since September 11th, absolutely. But 80% of the jobs in the military are non-combatant jobs. And a lot of people can serve 20 plus years and not see combat. So a lot of people do get deployed, a lot of people do see combat, but by and large, it doesn't mean all of us have done that. I personally say I never was in combat with the job that I had. So not everybody that's in the military has seen combat. Here's myth number three. All veterans have PTSD and are unemployable. It's interesting when you look at that. 10 to 20% of post 9/11 combat veterans have PTSD. That's about 500,000 veterans. Compared to the civilian population, 8% of civilians have PTSD from trauma, car wrecks, natural disasters. I mean, look at the folks in California right now. I don't know how they're going to recover from that. That's going to be tough. And the folks that survive hurricanes and tornadoes and that type of thing. That comes up to 26 million people. On a daily basis, we've all worked with somebody with PTSD. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a game changer. I mean, it can be, but it's not anything really to be afraid of. You hear about it every now and again, but truth be told, it's overplayed when you hear it on the news, and it becomes a really neat subject for a TV show or a movie. But by and large, folks with PTSD cope with it just fine. I heard a story about somebody here that just a couple of weeks ago an incident happened that, I don't want to say triggered, but it really got their attention because it reminded them of the PTSD, and they were just fine. They got a hold of the people they needed to talk to. Everything was just fine. So PTSD, don't let that scare you. Here's myth number 4. Veterans can only follow orders. Absolutely, we're trained to follow orders. Everybody in the military has to answer to somebody. Technically, even the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, answers to somebody at the ballot box. If they don't like his national policy, they could vote him out. But even the most senior general or admiral serving on the Joint Chiefs of Staffs answers to the President. Everybody that's a regional commander answers to their commander. I answered to commanding officers for 20 years. So we do know how to follow orders, but veterans also have experience in leading other people. Promotions provide greater responsibility, initiative, and creativity. In order to get promoted, most services you do take a written test, but a lot of them have selection boards, and they're looking for that leadership. Now, good followership does make good leadership, but at the same time, are you taking care of your people? Are you getting the job done? Are you innovating new ways to get that job done? Sounds really familiar to what goes on in the civilian world. So there's a nice transferable skill right there. This is really super important. Good leaders delegate, and great leaders delegate the good jobs to foster ownership in the process and train junior personnel. If you're a good leader, you're giving the good jobs to your people. It's not always about taking out the trash and doing all the dirty work and that type of thing. We need you to go do this. We need you to go do this visible thing. When they get to do something fun that they've been aspiring to do, instant ownership, instant buy-in. And that's what makes good leadership. Train your people to be your replacements. That's really the best way to go about it. Veterans are taught to get the job done, which involves creativity, independent thought. Let me tell you a story. I marked it there with the Eisenhower story. General Eisenhower was sitting with all of his Joint Chiefs back in World War II. Well, they noticed that he was taking a piece of string and he was just pushing it along the desk. Well, what happens when you push a piece of string? It just kind of balls up, just turns into just a big old mass of string. And one of the folks looked at him and said, "Sir, what are you doing with that string?" And that's when he grabbed the other end and started pulling that string. And what does a string do when you pull it from the front? It follows. It follows. It does exactly what you want it to do. And that was his point. Lead from the front. And that's one thing that veterans learn how to do. Here's myth number 5. This is good. National Guard and Reserve employees or students have unpredictable schedules. We've heard that 100 times. The typical training schedule, of course, is 1 weekend per month and 2 weeks in and around the summertime. But those schedules are published well in advance. They know when they're going to have a drill weekend. They know when they're going to have their 2 weeks of AT. They know when they're going to do that. Matter of fact, when I was stationed in New Orleans, it was so cool. We had the Reserve Center out of Rochester, New York, do their AT during Mardi Gras because they would come down and run security for our floats. What a great duty. For 2 weeks, these guys from Rochester get to come to New Orleans and just have fun in that city. They would literally march along the side of our floats. I say march, walk along the side of our floats to make sure, like, for example, people didn't go into the trailer to grab beads that were thrown, to keep people away a safe distance, that kind of thing. But it was perfect duty for them. And they loved getting out of the cold in February and coming down to New Orleans where it was nice and warm and, all the great food that was down there. Emergencies do arise. Natural disasters, deployments, these things happen. And most employers are going to make concessions. I hate to say concessions. They're going to make accommodations for when their people have to go away because it's a wonderful opportunity to serve our communities. Thomas Jefferson said it best, and you've probably seen it in the commercials when they advertise for recruiting with the different reserve components. You're twice the citizen because you're already being a stand-up citizen, working your job, keeping your yard mowed, that type of thing, but at the same time, you're serving your country. And you're subject to go and serve that country at a moment's notice, kind of like the old Minutemen were back in the Revolutionary days. And I love that quote from President Jefferson, "Every citizen should be a soldier. This was the case for the Greeks and Romans and must be that of every free state." So reservists and Guard members, again, they're twice the citizen. Matter of fact, that's the Army Reserve's motto. Transferable skills, this is really good. These are general skills that a person can use in many jobs. All of us, when we came to TCC, had a great list of transferable skills, and veterans are no different. Military service offers endless opportunities for transferable skills. It provides unique life experience. Think about all the places that folks in the military get to go. I mean, there are some people that winter over in Antarctica. That's not exactly a vacation spot, but nowhere in the world is off limits for military personnel. The great things that they can bring are communication, because they know how to convey and interpret, and since we're talking about communication, veterans understand the importance of that two-way chain of command and that clear, concise transfer of information. Leadership, obviously. They've had to take care of, government property. They've had to take care of their people. They've had to lead folks, take them around the world, bring them home. Analytical skill, evaluate data, information, and patterns. Organization and time management, absolutely. Military folks pretty much exist on 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. They're great at time management. Technical skills. Pretty much every job in the service has a great deal of technology attached to it. And then personal qualities and interpersonal skills, character, teamwork, most importantly. They know how to work with a team. They know how to get that team goal done. That's taught to military people from day one in boot camp. It's about the we, not the me. Here's some great examples right here. Aircraft technicians, boom, automatically. Engineering sectors and air traffic control, repairs, that type of thing, radar systems, anything having to do with aviation, avionics. Submarine operations, think about all the technology that's squeezed into that little bitty submarine that can spend 3 months underwater without seeing the light of day those 90 days. Complex computer programs, high-tech communication systems. They got low frequency, high frequency, all sorts of different ways to communicate with the outside world when they come up and surface just for 30 minutes to get the message traffic. An armed forces chef, safety inspection and distribution of food, and of course, being a culinary specialist. Think about when you have to feed, like on an aircraft carrier. When that thing's fully loaded with all the air wings and with the crew of the ship, that's almost 6,000 people that you have to feed 3 and 4 times a day. That's a lot of meals. That's 24,000, 30,000 meals a day. That's some incredible skills that they would bring. Combat medical technician, obviously hospital ERs, paramedic, medical consultants. Special forces, law enforcement, and security. The rule and challenge is to take what our veterans have earned and everything that they've done on active duty, reserve, guard duty, and translate it from military speak into civilianese. That's the big challenge, especially for us here in career services, is showing how they can take everything that they've learned and earned and turn it into something an employer would look for. I remember talking to an Army veteran one time. I said, well, tell me what you did. He goes, well, I was 11 Bravo. 11 Bravo is infantryman. And he really didn't think all that much of himself. But when you start peeling back that onion and you ask him, tell me the value of the government equipment that was assigned to you. Tell me how many people you supervised when you were a squad leader or a platoon leader. And those numbers start jumping off the page, and that's what gets the attention of hiring authorities. Skills translate to other jobs. Not every veteran is going to want to work in the field that they served in the military. But the things that they do can be translated, rewritten on their resumes and everything to show everything in their military specialties, and I've got them up here. MOS is Mode of Service, Method of Service. Army, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. NEC is Navy Enlisted Classification Code, and AFSC, Air Force Service Code. You can take all those and translate from one job to another because there are a lot of inherent skills that go together with that. Here's some strengths of veteran students. Attention to detail, absolutely. One mistake, bad things can happen. They're responsible, again, for $1 million of equipment, in many cases above and beyond their civilian counterparts. That's a lot of responsibility that you learn. They're confident, motivated, energetic self-starters. Absolutely. Get the job done, get it done right the first time. Decisive. Teamwork and camaraderie. Again, remember, it's about the we, not the me. Safety conscious, including first aid. Absolutely. They're looking out for each other. Underway on a ship, you're looking out for your folks. You don't want them falling overboard. But a ship is really an industrial environment. Think about all the things that go on. They've got that power plant. They're boiling water. They've got great machinery that powers a ship through the water. It's an industrial environment, and you learn a lot about occupational safety and health. Work ethic, absolutely. And they've already been vetted by the nation's largest employer. An honorable discharge means that they're drug-free because the Armed Forces have a very, very active drug screening program. People have lost their jobs over that. They've been separated because they do what's called pop positive on a urinalysis or some other kind of test. So honorable discharge means they're drug-free, which is a big plus in the employment world. Here are some challenges. When you're discharged, you're an individual. So you've gone from the whole we mentality, taking care of my shipmates, taking care of my fellow soldiers, Marines, Coast Guardmen, and Airmen, and now all of a sudden you kind of feel you're on your own. You've gone from this big cohesive group that gets the job done, and now you're by yourself. And that's the military regards you as an individual once you've separated. Again, it can make you feel absolutely alone. It's like getting orders to a new and unfamiliar situation all by yourself without any kind of support, and it can be a very scary feeling at first. But here's 10 cool things about veterans. Number one, student veterans are absolutely diverse. The Department of Defense has been one of the leaders in diversity since the late 1940s. Veterans don't see themselves as victims. Absolutely not. Some do, but by and large, they don't. They can feel alone on campus and even in their hometowns. That's a huge adjustment. I mean, 9 years after the fact of retiring, there are some mornings I wake up and go, how do I do that? So it does happen. It's a little bit of an adjustment. They're often unaware of what's called a traumatic brain injury. A lot of things can happen. You know, things can, I mean, just think of everything that could happen in the military. You could have a really mild traumatic brain injury that could affect your concentration, affect your sleep patterns, all that other kind of stuff, and people may not even know that that's going on with them. And this is really bad. These are 3 things that people still ask veterans today. Number one, these wars are an atrocity and a waste of human life. I don't get why you're having so much trouble. You volunteered, and did you kill anyone? How do you gracefully or diplomatically get out of those questions? Those are tough questions, and people, and I'm not saying anybody here does it, but our veterans do get asked that occasionally, and it's really, really tough to put them in that situation. Female veterans suffer deeply and almost always in silence. There's a big difference between male veterans and female veterans. Male veterans will tell you all about their military service. They identify with it. Yeah, I was 101st Airborne. Yeah, I was USS Ronald Reagan. I did this, I did that, that type of thing. Women veterans don't really talk about it that much. They'll tell you if you ask them, but it's not something that they put out there for everybody to see, generally, like what male veterans do. And then if something happens to a female veteran on active duty, she's not really going to want to talk about it. They try to bury those things. So something to be aware of with female veterans. They're some of the best warriors you'll ever meet, but lots of times, just like it says here, they'll suffer deeply and in silence because they just want to kind of keep it inside. A lot of people like to go back to the war zone or duty station. Right before I retired, I was going through the whole retirement protocol, and I went over to the medical section at what was the old Naval Air Station in Millington. It's now where all the personnel and recruiting is headquartered. And I was talking to a hospital corpsman, and sharp-dressed. I mean, creases could cut your finger. She was recruiting poster quality. Didn't look like the type that was a Fleet Marine Force corpsman. But when you walk in, just like what we've got in here, pictures all the way around her office of, you know, hitting the beach and coming off the transport ships and all that kind of thing. And we were talking and that kind of stuff, and you could just kind of read that she wasn't happy. And I looked at her and I said, Doc, you mind if I ask you a question? She goes, no, Chief. I said, Doc, you're not happy here, are you? She goes, no, not really. Why? She goes, I miss my Marines. I'm tired of being all clean and sterile. I want to go back to my Marines. And I said, well, can't you put in for an early transfer? No, I've tried that. But that's just it. She was in Millington, Tennessee, in the middle of the country, about as far away from water as you could ever want to be. And all she wanted was to get out of there and get back to her team. And that's one thing really, really common with veterans. Combat trauma, remember, is an injury, not a mental illness. Think about how you get a brain injury. Think about how you get PTSD. It's because you've witnessed something. You've gone through something. So it's absolutely an injury. To succeed, veterans just need us to understand, talk to them with compassion and respect. They've done some great, great work during their time of service. Student veterans are absolutely an untapped resource because a lot of people don't always know how to talk to them. Maybe a little bit afraid or afraid of saying the wrong thing. But yeah, they're incredible. They bring all these skills and they've got a great work history. They're raring to go. They're just a wonderful, wonderful group of people to work with. All of these came from Allison Lighthall. Her blog site was Hand-to-Hand Contact, and it's sadly kind of gone inactive, but she had great information about veterans and some of the things that they go through. Here are some other characteristics here, a little bit of facts and figures. 73 to 80% are male, 21 to 27% are female. This is a great one here. The military is made up basically 10 to 14% women, but double that number, see that 21 to 27, they doubly represent when it comes to college. So you've got a bigger number of female veterans utilizing the ability to go to college, so that's something to keep in mind too. Only 15% of student veterans are traditionally aged college students. Most of them are 24 to 40 years old. They either wait after they get out and use their GI Bill, wait till they retire, that type of thing. So they're absolutely automatically, by and large, going to be non-traditional students. 47% of student veterans have children, 47% are married. This is a great one. 62% are first-generation students because they've got that opportunity now to go to school with whatever program that they're doing, the GI Bill, voc rehab, that kind of thing. To me, that's a great stat because the opportunity wasn't there until they were able to capture it in the military. So that's a great number right there. Okay, I know it says facts, but I start with a myth here. The myth is that student veterans don't perform well. They do. They're more likely to graduate than their peers. The success rate for non-traditional students is 50. It's 72% for students using the GI Bill. That's great numbers right there. Veterans using the post-9/11 GI Bill have earned 450,000 degrees and certificates since 2009 and projected 100,000 more every year. So they're taking advantage of that funding, coming to school and being great students. Here's another myth that's going to turn into a fact. They think that student veterans don't perform well. They have a higher GPA than the national average, a 3.35 versus a 3.11 for your traditional, non-traditional student. Veterans prefer nonprofit and public institutions. They enroll 73% of veterans that utilize the post-9/11 GI Bill. These schools can improve outcomes with programs such as internships, career opportunities, and again, this came from Student Veterans of America. So they're just chomping at the bit to take advantage of these opportunities to come out and use the skills that they have to do really, really well on the outside, so to speak. And here we go. Veterans pursue academically rigorous degrees. The popular degrees are business management and marketing, but they also come after STEM. 51,000 STEM degrees using the post-9/11 GI Bill. So that's great. You know, STEM is something that we all need. These STEM openings are coming, and veterans are taking advantage of that as well. So here we go. Bottom line, I hope I haven't gone too fast. I haven't looked at a clock or anything. I don't know what time it is. Again, most student veterans bring life experiences that most students don't have. You know, they come in a little bit older. They know how to work an 8-to-5 job because lots of times they're working 14, 16, 18-hour days. They're standing watches in the middle of the night. They're performing security duty. They understand what 8-to-5 means. Experience, knowledge, maturity, and leadership. Absolutely. There's a lot placed on. Even the youngest of service members that come in have a lot of responsibility, whether it's looking out for their shipmates, their soldiers, their Coast Guardmen, airmen, and Marines, to taking care of just some major equipment. They've got a lot of responsibility, which in turn builds that maturity. A lot of challenges in adjusting. Like I said, even 9 years after the fact that I've retired, there are still some things that I'm not used to yet. There are a lot of things that really move fast in the military that don't move fast in the civilian world. So we got to learn a little bit of patience. A lot of stereotypes of veterans. They're either superheroes or they're broken, and there's rarely any middle ground. They do fall into that. They're no different than we are. They just have a little different life experience, and some, unfortunately, have seen some things that we don't want to see, much less even talk about. It's, you know, still people are afraid of PTSD and TBI, and they ask a lot of inappropriate questions based on myths, or I heard somebody saying that kind of thing. They are pretty good students, very, very successful, and they are excellent students. And just the general services that are provided to veterans shouldn't be any different than what's provided to anybody that walks into any of our offices anytime. It's just nice, you know, to be able to speak the language, to not be afraid of them, you know, an icebreaker or two if you've got one of those types of things. So shameless plug, I'm also out doing veteran career services. I'm here at Metro the first and third Thursday of every month, Northeast the second Thursday of every month, and West on the fourth Thursday of each month. And also on November the 29th, just right over here in the Metro Campus Commons, we're having a student veteran resource fair. We're not only bringing in some of the internal folks, like Joseph's coming from TRIO, and I'm hoping that Matt and James will come over from Veteran Services, but really just breaking the ice by bringing in veteran staff within our departments to be able to talk to these veterans in a pretty open and relaxed environment. But I'm also getting a hold of other external veteran service organizations, the DAV, Wounded Warrior Project, Community Service Council. Still need to get in touch with the Coffee Bunker, but OESC and their veterans reps. Right now we've got 18 people coming up between internal and external, and I think that's a really good start. So please encourage your student veterans to come to that on the 29th. Feel free to email me, john.nelson, and I'll be more than happy to send you any of the flyers. Make sure I got everything here. All righty, and with that, thank you guys so very much.
One more time for John Nelson. Thank you. Wow. I learned a lot. Did you guys learn a lot in that? It's a lot of information about our veteran students and what they go through and how we can assist them as well. We are right in the middle of open enrollment, as you may know. We opened just a few weeks ago, and that will continue until January. So thank you all for working so hard in your respective offices. A personal thank you to all of my staff, enrollment services, answer centers across the college, doing such an amazing amount of work, doing an incredible job. So thank you very much. Love you, and I appreciate the hard work that you do. I also want to thank the deans as well, specifically Dean Jose Dela Cruz and the FOF planning team who worked so hard putting all of this together. Give it up for the FOF planning team. They're also on your campuses. Thank you to the FOF campus support that have been working with us. As a reminder, you can fill out your questions on this card. A lot of that information will be put together, compiled, and then sent back to you no later than November 26th. This streaming event is also being recorded, and they will send that out as well for you to review. I do want to recognize another person who's worked so hard. I call him the executive producer of today's event. I mean, literally planning step by step to make sure that we were all on time. Everybody give it up for my guy in the very, very back, the director of advising, Mr. Greg Hope. Thank you all. Now, I promised to get you out by 9:30. We just have a few minutes, so what we've decided, the FOF Planning Committee, is that for the next few minutes, this is a perfect opportunity for you to talk with people that you may know in the audience that are representatives of the offices that you just heard. This is a chance to exchange information. Maybe it's something that you wanted to follow up that perhaps you don't want to write down and wait for the email later on. You can talk with them directly, and we have to hold you so you can talk for a little bit, and then at 9:30 we are free to go so you can start your Thanksgiving weekend if you observe that. I also want to thank our speakers one more time for our speakers today. Academic advising, career services, financial aid, the Bursar office, and wellness services. So thank you so much. We'll give this time back to you to talk just for a little bit, and then out you go. Thank you, everybody.